Alright, let's talk about C# classes. At first, C# is an object-oriented programming language, or OOP. It is structured around objects and mainly classes. A class is a prototype or a blueprint of a specific category, a specific object that have unique properties and unique behaviors. Properties would be variables. So for instance, let's say a car. Car has wheels, it has number of wheels, this is a variable. It has like a type, a manufacturer name, etc., a color also. And behaviors are functions and procedures, namely methods. So functions like car starting up, car stopping, braking, etc. So let's see here in this example, we have in a game, let's say, an environment, and within that environment we have objects such as an airplane. The airplane would be for the player and also for the enemy airplanes, okay, that are combating the player. The combat aircraft would be the class or the prototype or the blueprint, and for both the player and the enemy would derive from a blueprint, which is the airplane, which is the aircraft. So both of them would have the same properties, the same common characteristics, and even behaviors. Both of them, or for any type of airplane, you have the airplanes that fly, that take off, that fire rockets if it is a combat airplane, etc. So, but these variables would change value from a type of an airplane to another. This is what we would call instance. An instance is a subset of the class. So for example, if you have a class called cars, a car would have different instances that would be different types of cars, such as BMW, Corvette, etc. or Chevy. Properties and behaviors, as we said, they would change from one type of airplane to another. Even the functionalities would change a little bit. So if all airplanes have an engine or multiple engines with a type, power, all airplanes would have a fuel tank, but the capacity for that tank would differ from one airplane to another. The number of bullets would differ from one airplane to another, even the number of rockets and the number of lives in a game. Life would be how much damage the airplane could take before being broken off or being destroyed. So at the same time, these airplanes that have different characteristics or different values have common behaviors, have common types of properties, although the properties would differ in value from one to another. Different types of the same class, namely airplane, in this case would be called instances of that class that use the same methods, that have the same properties but different calibers or different values. So you would have an airplane, let's say F-16, it would have one engine versus the F-35 that would have two engines. For the properties, as you see here, you have number of missiles, for instance, number of bullets, number of lives, fuel capacity. These are the properties or the variables. For the behaviors, you would have the functions such as fly, barrow meaning the plane when it turns around its own axis during flight, fire when it fires whether rockets or bullets, and calculate damage to return how much damage it had taken so far and how much it can still survive the fight. So how do we declare a class? Let's say I want to declare class called airplane. You have the properties: private int number of missiles, private int number of bullets, private int number of lives, etc. Okay, and this is how we open up the scope of the class, and we close it by two braces, curly braces. Okay, an extension to that class. So here you have what is called a constructor. As you see here, the variables are all private. Private means that these variables are not accessible from outside of the class. Meaning, if I am inside a different class and I want to call airplane, if I type airplane dot, I cannot access these values or change in them. because they are private. If they were public, I can access them directly. Here in this case, since they are private, I've created a constructor that is public. Public means this constructor can be accessed from outside of the class. Now the constructor is an initialization to the class, meaning I'm initializing the values for that class, for the variables of that class. You see here public airplane and number of missiles and number of bullets and number of lives, etc. Float, fuel capacity, meaning that, let's say I created an instance which is airplane F-16, let's say, equal new airplane, okay? And I can fill here the values for the missiles, the bullets, the lives, etc. Now, these variables here are different from the variables here. As you see, this dot number of missiles, this variable belongs to the class itself, okay, which is this one declared within the scope of the class. So this dot number of missiles, equal number of missiles, this second one to the right is actually the value fetched from outside of the class when you call this constructor. This is fetched from outside. I'll give you an example afterwards. This dot number of bullets, meaning the local variable, the local property of the class airplane, number of bullets, equal number of bullets, which is inserted from the outside, and etc. Here we declare, after the constructor and the variables, the methods. So among the methods, public void baro, let's say baro means when the aircraft starts, doing maneuvers in air. And of course here, to make it simple, I simply just wrote to the console, the aircraft is barrowing, okay, nothing else. Public int calculate damage level. So here, this is a function, not a procedure, because it's returning a value of data type integer. Okay, return this dot number of lives. So it's returning here, since the function is public, it can return to the outside this dot number of lives, which is a private integer. Okay, so in other words, I can access these private properties using public functions and methods. All right. Also, other functions are, let's say, okay, void fire, which is not a function, actually it's a procedure. And what it is doing here, it is decrementing the number of bullets. You see, so each time you call the fire function or the fire procedure, it's not returning a value. However, it is decrementing the number of bullets which is inside the class, which is a private property, by the way. So you have a class or multiple classes, but we need the main class, which is in C# program. The class program is the main entry of the program via the static void main function. This is like int main within C++ or C, if you're familiar. So this is the main function, which is the entry point to the program entirely. This is where all other classes are called, and this is all where the interaction is done. Static void main string args, meaning here it is accepting string arguments. We need to just memorize it the way it is. Here we're declaring the instance of the class airplane. Now you see, this is how we declared airplane F-16. This is called a new instance, equal new airplane 7, which is the number of missiles. So this is the external value that will be assigned to what? To the internal value, to the actual property of the class. Then 600, of course, respectively here. 600 is the number of bullets within the class. So here, when it takes 600, it will assign it inside the class to the number of bullets declared inside the class, which is the actual property of the class itself. Number of lives 3, float, fuel capacity 200. And here we are calling the fire procedure F16.fire